What if everything you learned about the beginning of Philippine history started thousands of years too late? Most history lessons begin with Ferdinand Magellan arriving in 1521. European ships appeared, explorers stepped onto the islands, and the story of the Philippines supposedly began. But long before Spain arrived, people in these islands were already crossing dangerous seas, building large boats, trading with distant kingdoms, crafting objects from gold, writing legal agreements, and forming societies with their own beliefs, leaders, and political systems. The story goes back much further than anyone once imagined. In 2014, archaeologists working in Kalinga, northern Luzon, uncovered the skeleton of an extinct Philippine rhinoceros. Its bones carried cut marks showing that it had been butchered using stone tools. More than 50 stone tools were also found nearby. Scientists dated the site to around 709,000 years ago. This meant that an ancient human relative was already living in the Philippines hundreds of thousands of years before modern humans reached the islands. We still do not know exactly who these ancient hunters were, but their presence raises an extraordinary question. How did they reach Luzon when the Philippines had never been completely connected to mainland Asia by a land bridge? Somehow, intentionally or accidentally, ancient humans crossed open water to reach these islands. The mystery became even deeper inside Calao Cave in Cagayan. Archaeologists discovered teeth and bones belonging to at least 3 individuals. The remains had a strange combination of ancient and more modern features. They were different enough from every known human species that researchers gave them a new name in 2019, Homo luzonensis. Some remains were at least 50,000 years old, while one foot bone was dated to around 67,000 years ago. This means that a previously unknown human species once lived on Luzon, while Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other human relatives were living in different parts of the world. Think about that. The Philippine Islands were not empty lands waiting to be discovered. They were already part of the larger story of human evolution. We do not know what language Homo luzonensis used, what they believed, or how they organized their communities. But the fragments they left behind prove that human history in the Philippines began far earlier than the arrival of European explorers. Much later, modern humans reached the archipelago. Evidence from places such as Taban Cave in Palawan shows that Homo sapiens had lived in the region tens of thousands of years ago. These early communities hunted, gathered food, made tools, used fire, and adapted to dangerous and unpredictable environments. Some indigenous populations in the Philippines retain ancestry connected to early migrations into island Southeast Asia. Their genetic history also contains traces of Denisovans, an extinct human group related to Neanderthals. But modern Filipinos did not come from only one ancient population. Thousands of years ago, Austronesian-speaking communities moved through the islands. They brought agricultural knowledge, domesticated plants and animals, pottery, navigation skills, and languages that would eventually develop into Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, Kapampangan, Waray, and many others. They did not simply replace the people who were already here. Communities traded, cooperated, competed, and intermarried over many generations. Philippine society grew from layers of migration and cultural exchange. Filipino ancestry cannot be reduced to a single tribe or one simple origin story. The Austronesians were among history's greatest navigators. Their descendants spread through Indonesia and across the Pacific, reaching Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand. Other voyagers traveled west across the Indian Ocean and reached Madagascar, near the coast of Africa. Modern Filipinos are connected through language and ancestry to this enormous maritime world. The ocean was not simply a barrier separating the islands. It was a road that connected communities, goods, technologies, and ideas. By the first millennium, communities in the Philippine archipelago were participating in active trade networks across Southeast Asia. Merchants exchanged ceramics, pearls, wax, forest products, metals, spices, and gold. Foreign objects discovered at archaeological sites reveal contact with China, Java, Sumatra, the Malay world, and other parts of Asia. The islands were not located at the edge of civilization. They stood near important sea routes used by merchants and travelers. One of the clearest pieces of evidence appeared in 1989, when a man working near the Lumbang River in Laguna found a thin sheet of copper covered in writing. The artifact became known as the Laguna Copperplate Inscription. Scholars determined that it was dated to the year 900. Its text recorded the cancellation of a debt involving a person and his descendants. It mentioned officials and places and used a writing system related to the early Kawi script. This was not a legend written centuries after the event. It was a legal document. It showed that people connected to the Philippine archipelago were using writing, recognizing debts, dealing with authorities, and participating in a wider Southeast Asian cultural world more than 600 years before permanent Spanish colonization. Farther south, Butuan became an important trading center. Archaeologists discovered ceramics, metal objects, gold, and the remains of large wooden boats. These vessels were built using sophisticated techniques shared across parts of Southeast Asia. The boats provide evidence of a society capable of organizing skilled workers, gathering materials, navigating seas, and participating in long-distance trade. Imagine standing near the water in Butuan more than 1,000 years ago. Large wooden vessels arrive carrying merchants and unfamiliar goods. Workers unload ceramics and products from distant islands. Local traders prepare gold and forest materials for exchange. Different languages can be heard near the port. News travels with sailors. Religious ideas, technologies, and artistic styles move from one community to another. This was not an isolated village cut off from the world. It was part of a living maritime network. Gold provides another remarkable window into pre-colonial society. Gold objects found in places such as Butuan, Agusan, and Surigao include jewelry, ritual pieces, ornaments, and decorations. Gold did more than display wealth. It could represent authority, spiritual meaning, family status, and political power. Some objects show artistic influences connected to Hindu and Buddhist cultures from South and Southeast Asia, but they were created within local communities. The craftsmanship demonstrates advanced knowledge of shaping, joining, and decorating precious metal. The people of the islands also had spiritual traditions that shaped daily life. Many communities believed in spirits connected to ancestors, nature, places, and unseen forces. Ritual specialists, often known by names such as Babaylan or Catalonan, served as healers, advisors, religious leaders, and mediators between humans and the spiritual world. Practices differed between regions because there was no single pre-colonial Filipino religion. Political organization also varied. Many settlements were led by deities and connected through kinship, marriage, trade, tribute, and warfare. Some communities remained small, while others became influential coastal centers. Tondo and Manila developed around Manila Bay. Butuan became important in Mindanao. Cebu and other ports formed relationships with neighboring communities and foreign merchants. Sulu later grew through trade and the spread of Islam. These societies did not have the same borders as the modern Philippines, but they had leaders, alliances, and political structures. When Magellan arrived in 1521, he did not discover an empty or nameless country. He entered an archipelago filled with communities that already had histories of their own. Some leaders welcomed foreign visitors. Others negotiated, resisted, or fought them. Magellan was eventually killed at Mactan after becoming involved in a local political conflict and confronting forces led by Lapu-Lapu. Permanent Spanish colonization began decades later in 1565. Over time, colonial rule transformed government, religion, education, writing, land ownership, and trade. Many older practices weakened or disappeared. Others survived, adapted, or blended with newly introduced traditions. Baybayin declined as the Roman alphabet became dominant, but indigenous writing traditions continued among some communities. The Old World was not erased in a single moment. It changed gradually, unevenly, and sometimes violently. This is why Philippine history should never begin with colonization. Spain became a major part of the story, but it did not create the first chapter. Long before Spanish ships appeared, ancient humans had crossed the sea to Luzon. Homo luzonensis had lived in the caves of Cagayan. Austronesian navigators had connected the islands to a world stretching from Madagascar to the Pacific. Traders had sailed aboard large wooden boats. Officials had recognized legal agreements. Craftsmen had transformed gold into objects of beauty and power. The Philippines did not suddenly enter history when Europeans began writing about it. Its history was already unfolding beneath their feet. Philippine history is not simply the story of people waiting to be conquered or civilized. It is the story of communities that traveled, adapted, traded, created, governed, believed, and survived for thousands of years before colonization. If this video changed how you see the history of the Philippines, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, check out our other videos for more fascinating stories about the Philippines, its people, and the forgotten history that deserves to be remembered.